And now we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Extra Connections Race Talk, where we do once a month talk about things that are of that nature here on JLJ Media. I am the James Lott Jr. I am. I am the JL. I'm James Lott Jr. The JLJ of JLJ Media. I guess I am the James Lott Jr. too. So all you James Lott Jr. Screw you. I'm the James Lott Jr. And I'm here with Jared Carroll. Are you doing Jared Carroll?
That I know of. That I know of. Although when I was in college, I didn't meet a Jared Carroll, but I was at I was getting a loan because that's what I did when I was 20 or so, because I needed, $100 or so to go buy beer or, CDs or burritos. And you had to show your ID and you get $100 loan for, a week or whatever. And then you pay $107 back or something. But I was there and I had I said, no, Carol with a K. And this old man, he's probably like 30, but he seemed old to me at the time, said, Carol with a K? I'm like, yeah. He's like, Lawrence Carroll. And he came up and he showed me his ID and his name was Lawrence Carroll with a K. It was the only other Carroll with a K other than, obviously my family that I've ever known. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
Wow. Well, that's I know I find that very interesting. And you never followed up on another because you were so young and didn't care, probably.
Yeah, I did. It was
Of
neat for
family carols.
it was neat for about 30 seconds. I said, yeah, whatever, old man. I just need my $100 to go get some beer.
Thank God. That is funny. Well, kids and kidlets, we're going to go on to talk about something more important, I guess. And that could have been his long lost uncle or something or cousin. He has no idea, and he'll never know.
I just need my 100.
He just never will never ever know. Thanks to the likes, whoever's liking us in the chat already. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Okay, it's time for my list. No, before I do that, for my list, this actually is a continuation of a previous conversation. I have to say, people were asking me like, what happened? I forgot to do this on this show. So my power went out in my neighborhood, like it was dark as f. And I found out from my friend in Maryland, yes, across the country. I live in Los Angeles. He was like, something hit a pole and knocked it over, and you have 2,000 people out of power. And then 10 minutes later, we found that out also. So I had to text Jared, let him know that there's no, I guess that's it. I guess we were done. I have to think the man did it. You know who the man is. And so it was out for like 3-4 hours. So it was out for the evening. I had to go leave my house and forage for food. And what was funny, Jared Carroll, it was so dark in 3 directions. We're like, where do we go? So we went the direction that wasn't dark, and we went into the lights, and I found food.
And which direction was that? Let me guess. That was towards the beaches, Manhattan Beach, where all the white people live.
Yes. Actually, it was that direction. It was that direction.
I mean, I don't know LA super well, but I am from SoCal, and I think that just further supports that it was the man. Hey, here's a black guy. Okay, yeah, sure he's got his white sidekick, but he's basically one of those people talking about all this race stuff. Let's make him go into Manhattan Beach and see if he can fend for himself there.
And spend his money there too. Man took my money because I was hungry.
That's right.
I couldn't cook in my
The
own
man
house.
took you to Manhattan Beach.
So I wasn't literally, I was in Manhattan Beach, but I lived in Manhattan Beach, but I was actually in Marina Del Rey, so not that far away. So there was power over there.
Of course there was.
But not in the Black Beverly Hills, the Baldwin Hills, and Windsor Hills, and View Park. It was all, we were all out. But a truck did hit a pole. They hit a transformer that took us all down. So the video you see the last video, you guys comment underneath it. You're like, it was such a good conversation. It wasn't. I mean, me and Jared were flowing. We were vibing. We were working it out. But yes, thank you for your comments. It was literally beyond my control. So tonight we're going to give you a horrible show. Just kidding. We're going to give you another good show because race and stuff just never goes away. On that note, it's time for my list. I always read my list. One day, you guys have been asking me. One day, I will publish all my lists. I'm waiting to get enough of these. I mean, I have a nice little chunk. I'm waiting to get enough of them so it can make for like a little book or something. And I'll do explanations and have a whole thing. So that is coming maybe 2024 or 2025, one or two. It'll become my book of lists. listises. So as usual, I just have to ask him just in case he may surprise you one day. Do you have a list of your own yet, Jerry Carol?
No, I was looking around my desk, see if I have any like sticky notes that, have things, but no, I don't.
Not yet. One day he might. He might one day. It's my thing, but one day he might. So he said one day he might threaten to do a list of sorts.
I'm trying to let you have your, place in the sun with your lists and everything.
You call me a raisin in the sun? What? No, okay. So here is the list. Thank you, everybody. Boom, boom. There we go. For a comedy ratio. Okay, no. Here we go. So here is my list in no particular order, or some particular order. Okay, I get myself ready. This. Okay. The SAG-AFTRA strike is over. Justine Bateman, Fran Drescher, and Her as the Nanny. The TV show Upload on Amazon Prime. The new Robbie Williams docuseries on Netflix. Melanie B, aka Scary Spice. Comedian, activist, and actor Amanda Seales. Sean King. Marlon Wayans and his transgendered child. Alyssa Milano. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Burton. Tyler Perry. Britney Spears. Miss Barbara Streisand. Robert Redford. The late Sidney Pollack. And the movie The Way We Were. Big Brother 25 winner Jag Baines, the first Sikh winner to win Big Brother. And runner-up Matt Klotz, the first deaf person to play Big Brother. The Palestinian Hustle. The 10 Freeway in Los Angeles. Timu. Sheryl Lee Ralph. Tamar Braxton. Senator Tim Scott. Nikki Bailey. Vivek Ramaswamy. Amtrak. The series Loki on Disney Plus. The movie The Marvels. The movie Saw 10. Project 2025. Pink, the singer. The Beatles' new song, in quotes, new song. The Daytime Emmys. The Wiz making history on Broadway. Country Music Award winner Tracy Chapman making history. Happy birthday, Whoopi Goldberg, who is also known as Karen Elaine Johnson. Miss Gladys Knight. Mariah Carey. Robin Quivers. Howard Stern. Don Imus. Vlad TV. Nate Silver. 60 Minutes. Happy birthday, Sesame Street that turns 54. Jack Smith. Prince and the Revolution. Mark Hamill. Singer Jason Aldean. Dolly Parton and her first rock and roll record. Billie Eilish. John Amos. America Ferrera. Of course, Taylor Swift. Singer Jungkook. Batgirl. Carl Weathers. Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman, and Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. As always, I want to hear what Homeboy has to say. Any questions as to the list or anything he wants to comment? This is his portion of the show. Take it away, Jerry Carol.
Well, and as usual, I have very little commentary because I don't follow the the news. Well, I follow the news-ish, although I'm kind of in a little bit of a diet, just overall the last couple months, and I do not follow the media news, but I did write, and I always just write things down, I don't know, things, I mean, just names that kind of, for some reason, spark something. So here's what I wrote down. I wrote down Marlon Wayans, transgender child. I wrote down Alyssa Milano. I wrote down Palestinian Hustle. I wrote down Tracy Chapman, CMA. And I wrote down Robin and Howard Stern. And they all have their own kind of reasons, mostly just from personal interest or hey, well, James, what's going on with this person? So I mean, shoot, we could start anywhere.
You start. We'll go there.
Well, I'm interested in you know, as you said, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago or so when we were doing this and the power went out, I thought we talked about this afterwards. We were in a pretty good flow, if we do say so ourselves.
We do say so ourselves.
Seriously, anyone who does kind of, who does this kind of work where you're having conversations and talking, you kind of recognize when you're in a good flow. And I think we both recognized that we were. So it was, disappointing, but that's okay. Shit happens. But we were talking about this, what does it mean to speak up and not in a tone policing way, but like, how do we speak? How does one speak up in an effective, impactful way, given their context, their celebrity or not, their position, their power, et cetera, et cetera. And so I remember as a kid, well, maybe like a teenager and in college, listening to Howard Stern. And I thought it was the most hilarious show like that ever existed. You can imagine me as a 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old just tuning in and just listening. And surprisingly, I didn't think it was surprising at the time, but now when I think about it, my dad actually really enjoyed it as well. And so every once in a while, and my dad was, a gay man and pretty woke, as Ron DeSantis would disparagingly, say. And I remember we were listening to something. I don't remember what it was. I couldn't tell you what the topic or the content was. And we were both laughing. And my dad was like, he couldn't stop laughing. But then he's like, he's so racist. And it was like, but it wasn't like a, F you racist, it was like, there was something, and I didn't recognize it at the time. Now I do with all my infinite wisdom and knowledge. But at the time, or now looking back, it was like, he recognized that there was something about that show that, yes, was racist, but kind of like almost Howard Stern chose to be racist to point out the racism that was all around us. And so I haven't listened to Howard Stern in I can't remember, 20 years at least. So I'm not up to, I'm curious to hear why he and Robin, made the list. But anyway, that's my somewhat, ponderous recollection and story to connect with your list. And I'll pause there and let you, why is Howard Stern and Robin on the list? Did something happen recently?
So one second, actually, this is live television, folks. Second. So I have his book. It's called Comes Again. This book is about his interviews over the years and his interview style. I'm a host and interviewer. I do it for a living. This book is really, really, really good and gave me a different appreciation of Howard Stern. This book came out not too long ago. I think I got over the pandemic. I didn't read prior parts or any of those books. It's come out 2019, right before the pandemic, and I'm a fan of it because it shows as an interviewer, whatever. Why they're in the news again is basically because of TikTok and YouTube and all those spaces. There is a clip going around that's years old featuring Linda Ronstadt. Linda Ronstadt and Robin Quivers are on Jay Leno. I think it was Jay Leno. It was Jay Leno years ago. And Linda's being interviewed, but she stops and starts to address Robin, basically calling her a sellout, working for Howard Stern, and pulling her, I'm a Mexican American, I'm offended. And Robin was like, you don't know what we're doing on our show. You don't know our show. You don't know what we're doing on our show. We've never invited you. The whole thing. So it was lots of juicy stuff. But to see these two women go at it back and forth, and with their sides, where there are folks who sided with Linda, there are folks who sided with Robin, or it's Robin / Howard. My brother was a Howard Stern fan for years. I never really listened to him before. I know he was king of all media, so speaking all that stuff, and he said the curly hair. That's all I knew. It's a shock jock in some ways. But later, when I started looking at his interview style, he gets he gets the stories you want to hear. Some of the key phrases you want to hear, and this is good for anybody at home who wants to become a host. These are the key phrases you want to hear during an interview. Great question. I'm going to tell you something I've never shared before. I never thought of that before. Those are some of the phrases you want to hear your guests say when you ask them questions and you're talking to them. That shows you're doing something different, especially with artists or people who do multiple interviews. And I get asked the same 20 questions all the time. Jared, you talk about race and you're a white person. Do you like black people? That's a question I'm sure is like would be a common question for most interviewers. I obviously would ask you something totally different. I have interviewed you. You can tell me if I'm a good interviewer or not yourself. I have interviewed you several times. So you know my style is very different. Howard, I started to notice people went on his show because it was unfiltered, uncensored. And I don't believe he was racist. I mean, I don't know him personally as a person. I just really, and I think I see what Linda was trying to get at with Robin because she's a black woman on the show, but she was equally a part of that team as Howard was or anybody else. And I think at face value, it's kind of like, is she like an Uncle Tomming it, Auntie Tomming it? And I was like, what's going on there? But I mentioned Don Imus on the show, on my list. He was something else. And he got let go because of his racist remarks about nappy hair. He literally was canceled after that. But with him, he was well respected. I mean, and people, stars went on his show. I mean, people of all walks of life, all colors, all backgrounds went on his show. So it's that clip is going around. It's a clip going around. It's kind of that's got them talking again.
Well, you know what's interesting, and again, not being up to speed on that, but now that you've kind of shared it with all of us, I feel like I have enough knowledge of Howard Stern and just that. And this, well, I'm curious to hear what you think. Now that I think about it and that you just shared, you're right. Like there's a certain like understanding and appreciation of well, let me phrase it this way. When someone has a deeper level and proximity and familiarity with, in this case, race or any sensitive topic, right? And chooses to go at it in a different way, which you just illustrated, right? In a shock jock way, in a funny way, but really to try and make it interesting, right? There are always going to be people who don't have that level of fluency, in this case around race and racism, and I don't know Linda Ronstadt. I mean, I know who she is, but I don't know anything about her background or, her fluency, but who are going to hear that. And I'm not just talking about the little old ladies who, oh my gosh, they said, this. It's not, yes, those, but like, kind of more with it people, who are going to just no nuance, no subtlety, just like, he said that. That's bad. You're racist. Done. And I think that the challenge, maybe I don't even know what I'm trying to get at, James, but it's like they're always going to be with someone like Howard Stern who has such a huge audience, right? There are going to be people who like him for quote unquote the wrong reasons, right? And who are inspired or motivated or influenced by him for the wrong reasons, but who don't really get what he's about. And that's not necessarily, I'm not saying, Howard Stern, you need to explain yourself to all the people who might think you're racist and they want to be racist because of, I'm not saying that, just like, but that dynamic exists when you have, someone like a Howard Stern or anyone who's, controversial. There's going to be people who misinterpret what he's saying and who he is. And I think that's just a challenge. And you probably know about that more just being in the media world. What if anything do we do about that?
So a lot of people always think of Howard Stern also because of the sex stuff. that he's the one who asks the sex questions. He'll ask you point blank, "Did you have sex? Did you go down on her?" And you're like that's all part of the stuff. People, I always said, whoever goes on a show at this point knows what they're getting into, right? They know they're on there for a reason. I feel like they really want to. They want to change their image a little bit. Joanne Howell, like the chat says, never listened to him on the radio. Friends love that he pushed the limits, though.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I laughed. I liken him to Joan Rivers, the late Joan Rivers, who to me was a brilliant comedian. Watch her documentary. You guys should need to watch it. If you see it, if you get a chance to see it. It's not just about her career, but about her drive as an entrepreneur. It's like just this whole thing. But shit, so there's another thing going around. That's the thing about nowadays. People are clipping shit from everywhere, and it goes around, makes sense. And where she's on The View, and I'm going to tell the joke, and you guys take it how you want to, maybe laugh. She had an eye patch on, and they go, "What happened to your eye, Joan?" She goes, "Sorry." She goes, "I bumped it on Al Roker's zipper." And I just started laughing. I thought that to me is hilarious. It's kind of Al Roker, kind of random, like, right? Yes, he's a black man, but that just, I mean, okay. She says something to Sherry Shepherd on there too. She's like, "I'm not getting you. They think we get older that we just lose our minds. Is that okay, Star Jones?" And like make a joke that the media always miss people's same race people all the time. It's like she's actually making commentary on what's happening for real. But some people, like you said, either like her because they think she's being racist on purpose or she's being egregious on purpose. You're right. That's that line. And I feel Howard's the same way.
Well, and even like, if we're talking about like even Mel Brooks.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, like Blazing Saddles and
yes.
What's the one where, Comb the Beach. Yeah, Spaceball. Yeah, Comb the Beach. We ain't found shit. Like,
I love that.
Say, like, someone like that's racist. A white man making fun of black people's hair combs. And it's like, is it though? Or is he just, like, to me, that's not racist. Like, that's funny. That's social commentary. And that's poking fun. That's almost like poking fun at white supremacy.
Well, we could do a whole show on Blazing Saddles alone.
I have to rewatch it.
How brilliant it is. Cleveland plays the sheriff. On all the different lines directed at him in the film.
Well, and totally, and like where they're on the train, and like the guy's like, "We'll take the ends and but we don't want the Irish." Like, I just remember I watched that movie. I was like 9 years old or something inappropriate, right? Like, I had no idea what that meant. I didn't feel comfortable enough to say the N-word, but yes. I appreciate that line, but I had no idea what that meant. Yes. But then as I get older and I learned, just like, until the Irish, I don't know why I'm putting the Irish in quotes.
So they were Irish for real.
What I meant to say is till the Irish became white,
yes.
Right? They weren't white.
There you go. Right.
I air quoted too early, and I put it on.
Yeah, your premature air quotation.
Is that like the other Oh, never mind.
Exactly. Yes.
So, but once I learned, I'm like, oh, that is brilliant.
Well, there was a stronger language. They were called. So were Arabs that were called San, and there was all kind of stuff. Yes, all that stuff.
Totally right. And so, a 9-year-old kid watching this doesn't know any of that history, and that's what I'm wondering. Like, when was that? 78 or something like that when that came out, or like how many people watching that really, then and now appreciate the social, racial, cultural, political commentary that was just every single line. I mean, even when he goes into the German, and like the whole thing, like, oh, like, turn off the light so I can't see you, and like, is it true what they say about you people? Like, yes, oh my gosh, it's true, like all that.
Oh, I love it.
It's just hilarious. And so I guess, I'm thinking about, like, this is supposed to be the continuation of speaking up. Like, would you say Howard Stern, Mel Brooks, any of these, are they, I mean, I think we know the answer, but I guess maybe the better way to say it is, in what way are they speaking up? And is it effective? Is it impactful? Is it contributing to society's, I don't know, understanding evolution around race and racism and, systemic issues and white supremacy and all the things.
And speaking up through art,
Mm-hmm.
Whoopi Goldberg, her first Mike Nichols directed Broadway special, changed my life like many Black people's lives, where she played all these different characters, including a white girl, saying she wanted to be blonde. And it's like there's a whole undertone under, which is, oh my God, like, I have this blonde hair and like my life is easier. Like, there's a whole thing about that, folks. She's black as night with dreads, but she puts a white shirt on her head and pretends she's a white girl. And it's so much double stuff in there. It's like some folks look at it as, well, she's making fun of white. No, that's not the point. Like, they're doing it. There's a whole thing through art that's subversive. There's a whole thing where there's double meanings. There's under like, and I feel like those artists and many others, like a Joan, even though that's a Joan Rivers in there, or even some early Amy Schumer, they were saying things. Dave Chappelle, the Chappelle Show,
Oh,
all these things were all, well, even George Carlin, we were talking reading his book. There are people who were doing, back to Lenny Bruce, they were doing stuff that was literally, Dick Gregory. I mean, they were accepted. Flip Wilson, they were accepted in mainstream society, but they were saying stuff that was not. It was kind of coded and not coded at the same time. Phyllis Diller was speaking up in art through fighting the housewife syndrome back then. Moms Mabley, same thing. Moms Mabley literally was a lesbian in real life, much younger than she was on stage. She was playing a character.
yeah.
And this character was this old lady who was just dirty. Red Fox, another one. It's
Mm-hmm.
like there's folks who were like black and white and other. Margaret Cho in her early years, talking about fighting against being, being Korean and being having her first show flop on television because they wanted her to be a certain way. Like you say in the chat, putting a light or a joke on it leads to thinking. And I think on some level, I don't know if it changes lives in general. I think it changes people here and there. I don't know about the collective. I would need some
Well,
polls to happen. I'm not
well,
sure.
that's interesting because we've talked about on this show and on our podcast and just in other conversations. Like I'm in corporate spaces, so I'm in DEI spaces and whatever passes for social justice in corporate spaces, which and I see a lot of people online, but also kind of the way, I mean, I presume how they go about their work, whatever their work is, who are rightly pissed off at just the systems. They have their own lived experience, which is very valid and relevant and informative to their perspective, as it should be, as anyone doing this work it should be. And yet I wonder about their effectiveness. So like me, who like, yeah, I get it. I see where you're coming from. I'm cool. Like, but how many of me are there versus how many not me? Like, I think the ratio is like 1 to 10 or something, right? And so if you're not, Howard Stern or Joan Rivers or Mel Brooks or Amy Schumer or Whoopi Goldberg, like if you're not a celebrity, but also an artist of some sort, Dave Chappelle, if you don't have that platform, you have a big platform, but relatively smaller than any of those people. How do you find like I don't even want to say the balance, because that sounds like now tone it down a little bit, but like how do you find like where you actually are influencing and changing opinion, making people think, maybe not in the same way like Howard Stern is, but like whatever the corporate version of that is, where you're still speaking with conviction and unapologeticness. You're still you're not messing around, but there's just you don't necessarily have that freedom like that a comedian does or a movie director does, right? So that's, I don't know, I guess I'm interested in both, or not just like it's binary, but like the whole spectrum of like celebrity versus the little person who whose audience is 50 people.
Well, Joanne House says, good question. She said to you. I'm going to flip it a bit for you.
Okay.
Like, 'cause I am fully in this. This is a space I do know. Nowadays, the word celebrity have changed. The requirements of celebrity have changed. In some circles, I'm a celebrity. In some circles, I'm famous. And I say that with no irony or anything. It's just that you could be a big fish in a small pond. And because of the advent of social media, the advent of YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, it's a different world now. And there are people, because I follow so many comedians, I follow so many artists out there who are making livings for themselves with their types of comedy. And some of them are doing comedy on race and sexual orientation. I mean, they're out there doing it. A lot of them. There's a whole slew of them out there and are really funny and are doing it, but they're not considered the A-list crowd. So the question I would say, the flip question I would say with that is, I'm wondering how many people we just don't even know they are influencing and actually changing minds, because they're almost like the minions out in the field. There's so many of them. They're out there populating the world. So maybe every corner of the globe is getting some kind of change from all these lower end people who are actually considered celebrity on some level. I know that people tell me that some of the work that I do is changing their lives on some level, and I'm not Joe Coy or George Lopez or any of them. I'm not them, but I'm somebody who's trying through art to say things in various art. But it is changing some lives in some level. So I'm wondering, because there's so many of us now out there, I wonder now, are we? I mean, is it actually better? Because before it was rarefied air before. It was like only this many people can get through and become stars. But now you could be a star, and you could be a star, and you could be a star, and it's now you have 100,000 followers. You have 100,000. Like, it's maybe you're influencing those 100,000 followers. That's a lot of people for a nice little chunk in America. That's a nice little chunk.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know. So I would take a question. Let's flip it that way. That because there's so many of us out there marching the streets, so to speak, on social media.
Yeah.
Maybe
I like that, and I think you're right. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think we're in violent agreement.
I love you say that. It turns me on. Thank you.
How so? What was I going to say? I was thinking that term violent agreement, and then I forgot. I was actually going to make a more profound point than just saying something clever. How do oh shit, I forgot what it was.
Hey, when that happens, I'll say maybe I'll come right back.
It'll come back.
You know, how we get older, it happens. Go ahead.
Well, so this wasn't what I was going to say, but I'll just go there just to not have dead air. So I remember Don Imus. The nappy head, that was like the Rutgers basketball team, wasn't it? Like, I forgot the exact story. Yeah, the women's basketball team.
Yep.
So it seems the difference and between like a Howard Stern and a Don Imus, perhaps. Again, I know Howard Stern and of Howard Stern and his personality and story much more than I know Don Imus. But I would argue that Howard Stern has, and I keep using this, I've been using this for 20 years, this term like fluency, right? Like just an awareness, an appreciation of the history, consciousness, et cetera, right? Whereas like someone like Don Imus doesn't. And so, yes, they're both kind of shock jockey and whatever, but like Howard Stern, and maybe it's just because I, politically, like I lean left and all the things, but is that a fair, and not that, I mean, we're just using those two as an illustration, but just in general, like if you're gonna say, like I would say Mel Brooks has fluency, like cleverness, clarity on what he's saying and why he thinks it's funny. Howard Stern, others, whereas someone like Don Imus, like he just doesn't fucking get it. And then the backlash comes, and it was like, was it Jimmy the Greek way back in like the 80s? Was like a foot, and he's interviewed at some party and he's talking about how black people, they're like, and I can't remember, but it was like, even back then, it was like, whoa, dude, like that was just a little too candid. And, he got fired, and it's like, there's a big uproar, like, why did he get fired? It's like, well, because that was pretty blatantly racist, even in the 80s. And so I guess I'm getting at, like, for all, to your point, like, we don't have to be Howard Stern level. We can be at lower levels. It still seems to come down when uh it comes down to like fluency. Like, what is your point? What are you trying to say? Are you trying to poke fun at just the reality, but with empathy? Or are you being a dick? Are you being mean? Are you being, racist like Don Imus was? And not that I'm sure there's a continuum as well, but
In the chat, Crystal Hopkins, who I know has CP, cerebral palsy, she wrote, when Richard Pryor talked about the crippled people, it was so funny to me. And she's crippled. So she was like, so I think it goes to I'm saying that because it goes to your point of, I think if we know what their intention is, like I said, Whoopi Goldberg says something, today's her birthday, and she's one of my idols. I met her at a Different Light bookstore in San Francisco years ago. I got to meet her and get her autograph. And I'm a huge fan of hers. But she said something to somebody once. I think it was at her fight with Rosie O'Donnell
which is
years
no
ago.
longer there, by the way.
Rosie, I know the bookstore's not there anymore. I know. I'm
Different
sad.
Light, it's no longer there. Yeah.
I know. I'm sad. Um, she said, "I know when someone's being racist to me when someone fucking hates me because of my race. I know the difference." So James Lott Jr. takes the same stance. I have had people come at me with hatred in their voice, in their face, because I was black. Then I've had folks who just makes jokes, and I don't think they hate me. So I feel like I can almost read the difference. And I think a lot of people of color can read that we know the difference.
Mm.
We can see it mostly. And some white folks too can see it too. If it's super blatant, I'm talking about the stuff that's not super blatant. A
Yeah.
lot of times we can tell in tonality, intonation, movement, thought, and also the rest of what they present if it's something that's supposed to be racist. To answer your question, that's kind of what it is. And so for Crystal, she said that she got that Richard Pryor didn't hate crippled people. I mean, I'm against him. He made a funny joke, and well, also back then we have to admit this. We were much more open than we are now. And I get that's one of the discussion. I get why things are a little tense, but back then we were a little more looser about what we made fun of.
Yeah.
And and Joanne says in the chat, changes with the times. Sometimes old movies do not hold up. And that's true too. And some old jokes don't hold up, and that's true. But I'm just saying that I think for many of us, we can tell the difference when it's just something just racist. Otherwise, it's a racial joke.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this word real quick before you say. I would say so. There's a skit that made me laugh. To me, it's one of the funniest skits. There's two skits, but this is one of the funniest skits ever on Chappelle Show. And excuse my language, but it's called the Nigger Family.
It's in black and white, like sepia.
And they're black and they're white.
And he's the milkman.
The milkman. And to me, it's so clever and silly and funny all the same time that it's like, to me, I found it hilarious. And those white folks who were actors who were saying, I don't think they were racist. They're playing a role. I'm sure they got permission for everybody to say it. Like, it was part of the gig, the bit. And I just feel like there's some things that are okay. But it also goes the same way Joan Rivers has a bit about her husband who killed himself, literally killed himself, Edgar killed himself. But she tells a joke kind of in the midst of that, where it's like Richard Pryor, who set himself on fire and told jokes about it later too. In some tragedy moments, a good comedian can find some humor in it.
Well,
and
yeah.
It's a tricky thing. It's all of it. Just for me to wrap it up, it's all tricky. It's all a tightrope, but it can be done.
Well, I guess because I remember that skit too as a white person, thinking it was just genius. And I remember, the Matt story.
Yes.
I think some of you following along have heard, me talk about Matt. No, yes, we have not talked still for 5 years or so. But
one day The reunion will happen on this show. Just kidding.
Maybe, hey, maybe. And
Yeah,
he lives in San Diego. Maybe I'll come down, he'll come up, and we'll have we'll do
I'll
it live.
facilitate it. I'll
Yeah.
facilitate it. Yes.
In your house, and we'll promise not to destroy, get in a big fight and roll around on your floor.
Fight, 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 fight. No.
But so, and this is part of my evolution of consciousness too, around like speaking up. So Matt and I mentioned Blazing Saddles and Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Robin Williams, and like we are most of our, not most, but a big part of our friendship. I met him when I was 10. So this is 1983, which was, the early 80s was a big time for comedy, like just lots of good stuff coming up. So I'd go to his house and he had, whatever, HBO or Cinemax, or like he had access to where we could watch these, Ronnie Dangerfield special and all these like HBO comedy specials. And so we would watch them. We're like 10, 11, 12, 13, and watching the shit and thinking. So we bonded largely over comedy. So fast forward 20 plus years, and I wasn't in touch with how I knew how I had evolved politically and consciously, but I wasn't in touch with how he hadn't. And it took me years, like a decade and a half, to like, oh, wait a sec, just because I've evolved this way, he's still kind of the same guy he was in the 90s. Okay. All right. Now it makes sense. But things like that, like I just assume like, oh, we grew up watching comedy together. He probably thinks this is hilarious too. Hey, Matt, did you see the Chappelle show the other night when blah, blah? It's like, yeah, that was messed up. That was racist, or whatever. Like he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't like it. And I didn't have the fluency. I had the awareness that it wasn't, but I didn't have the skill set of how to talk to someone, let alone, quote unquote, my best friend who didn't understand it the way I did. But I share that because it illustrates, like, Chappelle was huge. I mean, he got so huge he had to go to Africa and just like dis the fuck appear, right?
Right. Yes, he did. Yes.
And and so I think part of that was the Matts of the world who enjoy comedy, who probably are, at some point were Chappelle fans, but then just didn't like him anymore because he was, racist. When people like me and you, we watch it, we're like, that's not racist. That's just genius, brilliant social commentary. And so I'm not saying Dave Chappelle has any responsibility to apologize or warn or anything, the Matts of the world, but you do have that split. And I don't know. I guess I'll pause there. That's just something that happens, and I think it, like, what do we do about that, if anything?
So that leads into Marlon Wayans. So Marlon made a big announcement that he has a transgender son. Literally today, he says he will help. I'm reading this from the LA Times. Marlon says next comedy special will focus on his transition as a trans son's dad. It's
How old
his,
is the son?
of course. Sorry, what?
How old is his kid?
I'm gonna get there right now.
Okay.
So, now knowing Marlon Wayans was one of the guys who did White Chicks. I know the writer of White Chicks. Actually, I know the writer of White Chicks. That's myself. His son, he has two sons, Kai, who's 23, and Sean, who's 24. Kai was Amai, his daughter, and now is Kai. So Kai is 23. And he says, and I quote just really quick, and he goes, I quote, he's on the Breakfast Club with Sean. Speaking of people who are shocked and everything, Charmaine the God, Breakfast Club. If you're anybody, you go on that show. Quote, I think a lot of parents out there need to have that message, and that I know I'm dealing with it. It was a very painful situation for me, but man, it's one of the best, funniest hours I could ever imagine. He said it's not so much about Kai's transition, but his own transition as a parent, going from ignorance and denial to complete unconditional love and acceptance. And that's from Marlon Wayans. So it goes into what you just said, and what I just said a little earlier about taking something that could be possibly whatever and turning it into comedy. He's attempting to take this situation and turn it into something funny.
Well,
I don't know if it'll work yet because it just hasn't been released. But I'm sure the transgender community will be watching like a hawk to see what's going on. But my brain just not even seeing it yet, and knowing of Marlon Wayans, what I've seen, I feel like he's coming from a place of love and change.
Exactly.
So now, go ahead, please go ahead. Yes,
Well, I mean, we were just arriving at the same spot where, yes, I mean, he's a comedian, so of course he's going to be funny. But if you think about, I mean, even George Carlin, as you mentioned, I'm reading this book, and I might even finish it tonight after our show. And I think it was last summer when my son and I had COVID. I think we watched his special on Netflix or one of those things. And I mean, I knew generally his story, but when and like Robin Williams is the same thing. Probably every comedian. I mean, if you really, you know, get to know their story, whether it's reading their books or, documentaries or whatever, like yes, they're funny and that's their job, but they're mirroring back to us like what society, how they see society, which if they're good, it's how many of us see society as well. So it's their kind of individual esoteric view on society and, cleverness and all the things that make good comedy. But to your point, it's coming from, not every comedian, of course, but the ones I'm, drawn to, it is coming from a place of love and desire for connection with other people. And so I'm now that I know this, I mean, I was a fan of Living Color and the Wayans brothers and stuff. I mean, again, 20 plus years ago, so it's not like I'm up to speed on, but I'd be interested to see that and just kind of, to your point, like, okay, how does he address this? And I'm not an expert in the transgender community,
same
but
here, same here.
I feel like we've talked about it before. When I was a teacher, I had transgender kids in my class. My boss is a transgender woman. I feel like I do have some a decent level of fluency and proximity and familiarity, with the transgender community. So I would be watching it not like, oh, what's he going to say? Is he going to say something, transphobic? But more like, how are people who don't have that fluency as they're watching us, whether they're fans of his or not, how are they responding? And what is the outcome? Hopefully the outcome is, yes, funny, but also a deeper love and appreciation, not only for his son, but for, what it's like to be, that close to someone who's gone through that.
I remember when Cher, admitted to the world that she was upset about Chaz at first too. Everybody's like, "Wait a minute, Cher, you have such a gay following, blah blah blah," and that's something that I know I've dealt with myself a little bit. It's like, how hard it is out there for anybody who is not quote unquote the norm. We just know how hard it is. And what happens to someone else, it's not, you feel no super connection. It's like, oh, that's my friend, that's so and so, that's fine. But it's closer to home when you're a parent, it's very different. And I would imagine when it comes to changing genders, it must be very strange for a mother. And she learned to accept her daughter as a son, and they're fine. But she was like, I had a transition moment. And some folks attacked her, of course, because they just can. But others, I'm like, where? And that's where I'm wondering where, this is a great piece of this, speaking of thing, where is the grace? Where is the grace of, I misgendered you this once. I did not know you were. You looked like a man to me. I called you sir. Like, I just like, that's, like, it's like, I don't, just okay. I understand on your end, as a person who also who's otherized, I understand that side too. We're like, God, one more person. But it's like, you have to. I'm just wondering, where is the grace? And I know that's something that is always a debate. It's like, I'm a black man. I'm tired of being a black voice of America. And one more white person asks me one more goddamn black thing, I'm going to just explode. I felt that way 3 years ago during George Floyd and all that. I felt that way because all my white friends were calling me, asking me about black stuff. And I was just like, okay, I'm done. I get that part. But at first, I did show grace at first. It was kind of like, some of them I know they're trying to really figure out. They're just trying to figure it out. But there's also that whole thing of, when is it, when can you just give someone, they don't know. Maybe you're the first transgender person they've dealt with. Maybe you're the first gay person they've dealt with. Maybe you're the
Yeah.
first. Again, it goes back to intention.
Yeah.
I just want to intention.
Well, and I'm interested, and I don't know, Marlon Wayans personally, of course, but
No,
even like his, I don't know his personality other than being, funny. Like I don't know his politics, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't be able to assess this, but I'd be interested in like where at what stage is any individual's like evolution of consciousness. So like my story, right? And I say this often and in detail, different levels of detail depending on the context. Like who I am now is not who I was, 25 years ago. But who I am now and who I've become the last 20 plus years is precisely because of who I was 25 and 30 years ago. Right. So like I can speak to like, yeah, I mean, was I blatantly, homophobic, transphobic? No, but I was just clueless and I didn't have familiarity, fluency, proximity, anything to really anything other than cis straight white people. So I can say that like right now, I'm saying it like very confidently without, worrying that I'm, whatever, triggering people or jeopardizing my credibility or anything. Like, no, that is my credibility. Like I used to be that way. And then I said, wake the fuck up. And I've been waking the fuck up for 20 plus years. And now this is who I am. So it's like, back, if you want to go back even farther, like Socrates, right? Like the whole Greek thing is like, what makes a good person? It's like, it's not what you do, it's who you are. And so, like, when I watch, like, did you say his specials? He's working on it right now, or it's been
it sounds like he filmed it, but it's not out yet. That's what it
okay.
sounds like.
So yeah, I'd be interested to see that and go like, all right, what is his humor? What is his commentary on this, and how does it reflect his as you said earlier, his love, which presumably he has for his son, and his his understanding, his fluency of the topic, which again I may not be able to assess because I don't know where he was 5 years ago or 20 years ago. But you see where I'm getting at? Like I think that's in line with what you were saying around like how do we give grace but still like hold people accountable, but not just the accountable part, like the holding part as well.
So I'm going to go totally on the other side of this. Then you get people who say stuff like this. Republican Senator Tim Scott, black from South Carolina, just dropped out of the presidential race. I mean, none of them are going to be nominees anyway, folks. You know it's going to be Donald Trump. That's another story. He drops out, but not before saying, quote unquote, he caused a lot of controversy yesterday. We are not a racist country. We're taught racism. So on both sides of the aisle, people are kind of like looking at him. I watched him on several platforms like The View and stuff talk, and at first I was like, okay, I can handle. There are a couple of black Republicans I liked in the past. I liked Colin Powell, and some people I kind of liked, some people I liked. He said things I think he lost me with all that, but other stuff too. He lost me, but it was kind of like it makes you think of what is the because for black folks, there's a whole assimilation. Well, I should say black folks. For a lot of people of color who come to this country or abroad here, there's a whole assimilation factor. There's words for it, of course. I don't need to repeat them. That's what they call for doing that. So you always wonder, is it to stay in power of some sort? Are you just kowtowing to your white counterparts? Or number one or two, do you really believe this? Somehow you really believe this? Because this happens, I guess we'll believe this. Number three, are you just fucking crazy? I have no other nuance to say it, Jared. I just don't have any. I'm sorry, I don't have any grace for that at all, or whatever either. When it's brought up, all these statistics are brought up to them about the racial disparities in the country. So it's like you have people like that happen, where at first you're like highly educated, all this stuff. He's elected, he's black, so he's Republican. Okay, that's fine. Hoping that there's at least we feel there'd be some kind of commonality in whether Republican or Democrat. You'd feel like we can all agree on like one thing, but apparently we can't. So there's that too. So there's people speaking up on both sides about this, either speaking up with them, going, "He's right," like a Candace Owens, and like that, or Stacey Dash, like that, or other folks on the other side are speaking. Speaking of, we're talking about speaking out. So speaking up, but he's speaking out saying, "Black folks are all wrong. What are you talking about? You're perpetuating just racist stuff. Everybody's fine." So there's a speaking out of that too. And
Yeah.
I want to go that direction. I'm going to change it all and go that direction.
Well, I like that direction because it made me think of two things. One, I think it's fair to say you and I are more or less on the same team, on the same side, right? The liberal side, the progressive side,
Yeah.
whatever you want to label us as is fine with me. So, okay, if we're advocating for and kind of, analyzing and assessing the effectiveness of speaking up, like, isn't Tim Scott saying there's no more racism his version of speaking up? So isn't that, I don't know, I don't know, okay or legit or
Right.
like, right? So there's that. But then the other thing, which I'm interested in, like, okay, if you have people like that, whether they're black or not, because obviously we know it's not just, a black Republican senator who's speaking up and saying there's no racism. If there weren't people, and a lot of people, maybe there wouldn't be as much need for people like us to speak up. So I don't want to go like, oh, like we're looking for enemies to fight against, but we don't have to really look that far. But so like there's always going to be, two or more sides to everything. Like we're never going to get to a place where like, there isn't someone who thinks, transgender people are sick.
Right.
We're never going to get to a place where there isn't, someone who, thinks black people should go back to Africa. We're never going to get to a place, et cetera, right? We're just never going to get to that place. Right. How do we get to, enough of a place where those opinions and views are less mainstream? And I think that's to me personally a more, I don't know, reasonable goal. Not that I have a goal like, okay, I spoke up today and I changed 13 people. I just have, 14,577,936 to go. Like, but how do we get, and we know like historically, as many of these books that I have here next to me, like the history of, white people or stamped from the beginning, like they talk about the history of racism. It's not like, oh, like we were here, now we're just kind of steadily just making progress. No, it's like, right? And I think right now we're in like a little bit of a dip. We're in that, when we're going up and down, we're kind of a little bit in the down with all the stuff, we've been talking about with harmful legislation, one of our podcasts that we just recorded, which should be out in a couple of weeks, right? Like we're in that little bit of a backlash, whether it's race, whether it's, trans folks, etc. And so how do we keep speaking up so that we contribute to the climbing out of that backlash? And so hopefully it's 2 steps forward, 1 back, not 1 step forward, 10 back, etc.
Well, that's it all. Well, that's also it's all what's the word I'm looking for? Perception. Because I always say this because I deal with this in my soap opera world and Star Wars world. 10 folks could watch a show and have 10 different opinions. I know this like the back of my hand. Trust everybody. I know. So that goes on to it goes on to race, religion, politics. 10 people could think 10 different ways. Right. And so I like what you said there because it goes into then it filters out to the perception of people how they receive something. When they start to speak out, you're right, it could be on the other side of things from what you're thinking. I mean, they're feeling just as strong by saying, like, I look at people who are, against abortion. No one's for abortion. Like, I mean, like, for it. Like they seem like that side of the aisle who's against it. I mean, everybody's pro-life. I mean, there's nobody's pro-death or pro-abortion. Like that side doesn't get it. But there's situations where some of this stuff is warranted. It's not fun. It's not exciting. So, but I get that those folks who are speaking out really do believe it's murdering a person. There's a great, speaking of TikTok and stuff going around, it's a great clip of The West Wing, the award-winning The West Wing, with Martin Sheen, who played the president. Has a whole, there's this like a little 2-minute thing where he tells off this reporter who's against gay marriage or whatever, saying that being gay, and he's like, well, so should I stone my wife for wanting to live here? And he starts quoting all these biblical things. You know, should I drag my person out who works on the Sabbath because he doesn't work on the Sabbath, and all these things they say in the Bible, and how they're all literally out. You would never do these things, first of all, and there's stories. So I think there are folks I really do believe they go straight to late-term abortions a lot of times. That's the one they go to. They always find a focal point. It's late-term abortions or gays or pedophiles, when all the statistics in the world, all the evidence in the world goes to usually straight, identified, cisgendered white men, mostly women too on some level. Hardly ever anybody of color, hardly anybody of any sexual orientation. They're usually youth pastors and Boy Scout leaders and clergymen, and women are teachers. Like, but no, it's the drag queens who are the molesters and stuff. We're trying to. So it's like, but I look at it and go, I think they really do believe, because this is not quote unquote normal to them.
Yeah.
They don't understand it fully. They can't seem to accept it fully. They're speaking up. So if we're going to talk about, you're right. If we're going to talk about speaking up, we have to mention on all sides, there are folks who believe in the police and believe that law enforcement is good, and can't wrap themselves around that there are bad law enforcement. There are bad cops out there, and things are done all the time, because it hasn't happened to them. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's always fine with me, and you just answer what they tell you to do. You won't get killed, that kind of stuff. But I think some people really do believe, like they wholeheartedly believe that.
Well, and this goes back to Tim Scott as a good example. Like, does he really,
right,
as a black man in the South, granted with power and privilege and
yes,
positionality and everything, but still, as a black man in the South,
yes,
does he really, genuinely, honestly believe that we're not a racist country?
I'm smiling because everything you just said, like as you keep piling it on, it's like.
So I don't know, and I don't know if we'll ever know with him,
know.
Personally, and in some ways it doesn't matter. But I do believe, whether you're talking about race or transgender folks or gay folks, I do believe immigrants, that white people, and not just ignorant, lower class,
Right.
uneducated white folks, yes, them as well, but also very successful, educated, otherwise intelligent, I guess that's another whole nother show to discuss that. But believe that they are if they're not careful and they're not prudent, that they will be replaced, or that if not immediately wiped out, that the power structure dynamic will invert. We'll just go 180. And I don't know if that's like oh shit, like if that's like a guilt thing, like, we've been doing this for like 400 or 500 years, and like if we don't like keep this going, like it's gonna flip, and then we're gonna be like enslaved. Like I don't know if it's that level, or if it's just like, equality. There's a quote, I don't know who says it, but it's like when you're used to privilege, like equity feels like oppression. So it's, you see that so many instances, whether it's education, whether it's jobs, employment, whether it's politics. Like, oh my gosh, if we keep hiring so and so, it's like there's like two folks that got hired, and there's like 100 of you, so I think we're good. But I think there is that genuine, like, what's the like vigilance, and not just like vigilantes. Yes, there are vigilantes, but like that vigilance, like we gotta protect what we've got.
Well, the
Uh,
thing is, what's happening, Jared, is that it's happening on all fronts. It's almost like you're on a peninsula in San Francisco. No, you're on a peninsula, so three sides of water. For a lot of people, they're in the middle, and it's three sides of other. So there's transgender women trying to lead, go into men's sports. There's gays trying to run for president. There's women trying to get higher jobs. Like it's happening on all sides. There are Latinos trying to live here legally. Like it's I feel like for some white folks who just for been homogenized for so long, I saw a thread the other day, and I shit you not, saw a thread. And that's that whole I mentioned the whole Project 2025. It's not good either, folks. Look it up. Um, there's a whole bunch of people who are like, it should still be the Cleveland Indians with the Wahoo symbol on the front. It should still be the Washington Redskins. Fuck you. It should they seriously are just like they don't care what the Indians think. They're not even called Indians anymore. They're now indigenous or native, like we called. They don't care what black folks think. They don't care what Latinos and Asians. They don't care what anybody thinks. Their team should be called this. That's how it's been for 1,000 years, and that's it. They don't give two shits. And I saw this thread just the other day on Facebook. And I was like, how scary all and the comments were so scary to me, it made my stomach hurt. I had to get off the thread and just like stop
well,
looking at it.
you know what it is, James? There's a book that I love and I recommend to you and anyone else. You've probably heard of the Four Agreements. Yes, Don Miguel Ruiz. So that's a great book.
Yeah,
His son, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., wrote a book called The Five Levels of Attachment.
I've heard that.
And the idea is that whatever it is, big things like sports and religion and politics, or little things like, I don't know, the color of your highlighter pen. Like, it could be literally anything that is in our world. We have a level of attachment. And it goes from authentic, where we have no attachment, like I don't give a shit. It can be pink, it can be blue, it can be yellow, as long as it highlights what I need to. I don't care, and I don't care what brand it is. Like two, right? That's level one. Level two is preference. Yeah, I kind of prefer pink. If they have it, I'll pick up pink. Level three is identity, right? Yeah, I mean, I really like pink highlighters because I don't know, it's just such a cute color, and all my things that I've highlighted are all in pink. So if I were to use blue, it would kind of mess up the color scheme, right? Then it goes level four, which is internalization, where you are the thing. And I'm using this joke as a kind of but as an example, right? But take religion, take race, take politics, take sports, right? Where internalization is like, you know what? They've always been the Indians, and they're always going to fucking be the Indians because it's my team. It's my team. I grew up in Cleveland, or I didn't even grow up in Cleveland, but I just love it, right? So it's like this whole thing. And then level five is fanaticism, where like I'm gonna kick your ass and maybe even kill you if I'm drunk and we get into an argument about it in the bar. I might kill you because I care that much about it. So the whole book is about how do we each move to level one and eliminate so much of these attachments that are mostly bogus if we actually stop and think about them.
Yeah, I don't know how we get there. It's like again, I have no clue how we get there. It goes back to how we get grace. It goes back to all those things, but I just know that September 11th killed us a little bit inside, changed things. Um, Getting Obama as president changed things. Getting Trump as president changed things. Getting social media changed things. So it's a whole new world. No, it's a whole new world out there where people are talking, and it feels sometimes maybe talking in a vacuum, but they have a small group where it could be 10 people, it could be 10,000, it could be 10 million. Um, my most successful video of all time is me saying, you're black when you put bread in your refrigerator. 8-second video I did, it's at like 80 million views. Am I proud of the video? No. I was a dumb, silly video I did one day. I don't even eat bread most of the time. And I didn't mean, I didn't even, it was just a stupid kind of commentary on life. And it's made me famous in many ways. And so now I probably will have my tombstone or my thing, James Lott Jr., 54, passed away yesterday. The viral video of the bread going to the refrigerator. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen. That and Jimmy Kimmel, probably two things. That was, I mean, no. But that's the world we're in now. So even with you doing corporate shit and being in a corporate space, you could be in a political space, you could be in an entertainment space or sports space. Doesn't even matter now. Now everything is 24 hours all the time, every corner of the globe, influence, and everyone feels they have something to say because they were silenced before or just didn't even have the platforms back then to say what they want to say. I mentioned Alyssa Milano. She's one of the people who started the Me Too stuff. Black Lives Matter. There's all kinds of things have come up from these social movements. They can actually say something. Rose McGowan was speaking out. The Harvey Weinstein stuff came out at the right time. I mentioned it here. Like, sure. My buddy's the Palestinian Hustle. He has a business. He's Palestinian. Now he's speaking out all the time on Palestinian issues. Same with Amanda Seales. Same with Sean King. It's like it's just become this thing where it's social media and it's the whole new way the world runs. It's so different now. So I always think, I don't know about you. Maybe you're still idealistic and still have hope in your heart, Jared Carroll. Some days I do, and some days I don't. And that's not even the black part of me. Just the humanity part of me. Some days was like, we're going to hell in a handbasket. I don't even know how we're going to even survive this. Somehow we move on. Somehow we survive. It's kind of like Dune or whatever out there, but we make it. But I don't know. I mean, as we start to kind of wrap this up a little bit, as I can say, we talk forever on this subject, of course. But I just feel like I don't even know if there's hope or not. Because you did say something that's true. But we're never going to post anything. It's not going to be a utopian world where nobody feels nothing of any kind of. That's not going to happen. We just know it's not going to happen. However, my thought is, I wonder how far along can we go? And right now, it feels like we're going backwards. And I know a lot of folks are looking at 2028 already. They're like, this election is going to be a mess because if Trump's not allowed to run, and it's going to be a mess. But they're already saying, let's look at 2028. It's a little better down there, because Trump won't run again, be too old. Like they're trying to pass that. I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to give us some hope and go, well, this way, it may be shitty for the next 4 years, but let's look at 4 years later. We'll have Gavin Newsom as president, whatever. I mean, whatever the thing is. I mean, I think it's, but you know what I mean? Like they're trying to get us to go, shiny object, 2028, shiny object. There's a war going on right now, but let's look over here at, whatever here. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, Jared. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if this is anti speaking up or if this is the best format or the best way or illustration of speaking up. You brought up 2028. Yeah. So I have twins. They're 14. Well, they'll be 15 in January. Jeez.
Wow.
So they graduate in 2027. I mean, that's like their email and everything, so and so at St. Mary's 27. So in 2028, I'll be an empty nester and I will be 55, probably not quite wealthy enough to retire. So I hope, and there's so many variables, including my wife and her job and our money and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I hope by 2028 that I get to kind of disappear and heal.
Okay.
I don't know if that's realistic or noble or cowardly. I'm not sure, but that's kind of where my mind's at.
I'll be almost 60. Oh my God. It's crazy. Probably still here doing it in the trenches, still working it out, I guess, I'm sure. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, that's yeah. But
Anyway,
I know that my grandkids by then too, they'll be not the youngest ones, but the older ones, they'll be able to vote. And it's gonna be up to them. Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whoever they are, it's up to them. They're gonna have to need to get in there and they have different wants and needs than we do. You and I are Gen X. They're very different than we are. So I'm curious to see what your kids decide, what my grandkids decide.
they'll be able to vote in 28.
What?
My kids will be able to vote in 28.
That's what I
So
said. I'm saying your
yeah,
kids, my grandkids. So I'm saying we'll be interested to see what they choose,
yep.
what their value system will be compared to us. We're Gen X. You know, we have millennials have different thing. You know, we all have different things. So I'm just curious. Gen Z is very different. And what's funny is these politicians in the Republican Party are trying to limit their rights, but it's still trying to go for them. Like, so you know, try to limit someone's rights, why would they come to you? Like, that's like it's the most backwards thing on earth. So I'm curious to see how I'm curious to see how 2024 plays out. But you know, we had an election recently, and a lot of places turned. A lot of blue went red, and red went blue, and things people got voted out, and so it's like you know, it's the Democrats basically won basically most of the stuff. And so like that's interesting because there are younger people that are coming out. They're starting to come out and actually vote.
Yeah.
Women are voting. The women are like, no, we got to protect our rights. We got to get out there and do this. So I'm like you. I don't. I'll always be out there. I guess. I guess I don't have the. I feel like I don't have the luxury to not be out there. I think I started something, and so I guess I have to be out there on some level. I feel like I'm of the people, so to speak. It's a little bigger than I am. And I like it. I like doing it, and so I think I will do it. I'm gonna try to have moments where I take care of myself in the middle of it all. It's always not easy. As you know, this work can be very tiring and very exhausting. And for some of us who are living it and doing the work at the same time, it's double exhausting and double tiring. And I had to explain to somebody, and I don't mean to get sad or anything, but just that I make a choice every morning to get out of bed or not. Because if I look at the news or look at my friendships or outside my door, again, I'm on a peninsula where three sides are telling me all the reasons why I should not get out of bed. And for me just being who I am before I even do anything, just me being who I am. And that is extremely tiring and depressing. But I choose to get out of bed, take my dump, and then get my coffee and keep it moving and say fuck you all. James Lott Jr. is still here. He's gonna keep going because so that's where we're gonna end it. We finished our talking. The man didn't stop us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, California Edison, for staying on. Jared Carol and I have a podcast, and you guys are listening to it called A Black Guy and a White Guy Confront. Every Friday, new episodes come out. We have episodes coming out to the end of the year. They're all up there every Friday to the end of the year, except for I think one day we're not doing it, but at least day after Thanksgiving. But the rest of every other Friday, they're coming out, and you can check those out on any streaming service platform out there. Jared Carol, tell them where they can find you if they want to continue with you or hire you for some kind of consulting, speaking, anything.
LinkedIn is the best place to reach me, or jaredcarol.com, JaredKarol.com.
And if Lawrence Carroll is out there, he's still alive,
Yeah.
contact me.
I should look him up. See if I
guys
can.
together, see what's going on, or Lawrence Carroll Jr. at this point, because we talked a long time ago. If that was your dad or somebody, contact me. I want to get you guys connected. What's going on? And then that'd be kind of funny. Yeah, I love it. If you're out there, because I think that's kind of crazy. He had the same last name spelling as you. You don't run anybody like that ever. Every Lott I run into, I talk to them like, "You're a Lott too." Oh my god, you know, like it's like we don't have common last names. He's actually, folks. If you're listening to us, he's looking at. It's so funny. Oh, you found him?
Yeah, lawrencecarol.com.
Oh my god!
I'll put it. Let me see here.
Like I have to look. I have to look. Now I have to look.
Or I'll put it in the chat in case anyone in the YouTube chat.
Okay. Yes. That is
With
so
Los Angeles, safely tucked away in the suburban sprawls of San Fernando, like totally dude after graduating from Cal. Blah blah blah.
Oh yeah, Laura's oh my god, that's hilarious.
I have to reach out to him. Just say,
You
hey,
have to.
did you happen to be at UCSB in the early 90s for any stretch of time?
Which possibly, yeah, possibly,
Yeah,
right?
he was in LA and it's just up
Yeah.
the road a little bit. So
Oh my god. I'm coming out. Is he what's going on here? I mean, oh, I gotta he's I gotta see what's going on there. Okay. I will continue to look at his site too, because this if you look at his homepage, there's some stuff on there. Uh
yeah.
I'm gonna look him out. See what he's it almost looks like he's in the same kind of work as you are a little bit. It's kind of
Yeah,
funny.
I was gonna
Now
say
with
like a lot of LGBT stuff here, it looks like.
yes. He's a freelance writer and editor. Oh my god, this is hilarious. But he's a writer. That's interesting too.
I
Okay.
should I mean I should just fill out his contact to say, I know this is totally
Yes.
random, but did you happen to
We will
actually
follow this up. We will follow this up, folks at home. We're going to follow this up. If whatever's outcome happens, we're gonna on the next show. We will follow this up. This is very exciting, actually. I'm yeah, okay. I'm James Lott Jr. You can follow me here. All James Lott Juniors are. Um, where are they? On all social media platforms and JLJ Media. Like where am I? Where am I? I have a Christmas album out right now called Silver Bells and Disco Balls. You can get it wherever you get your music. Play it now. I don't care. It's November 13th. Get it now. It's fun dance disco music. Have a good time with the Christmas side on it. And we appreciate you listening to and watching us here at Extra Connections. We'll be back again, and we'll talk to you.